Lovely to be able to see you all, including somebody who's been adding to my art gallery during the week. And let's get the meeting underway. First up, we don't have any apologies because everybody is here, so we move to the minutes. Are there any additions or changes to the open minutes that people would like to make?
No, I move they be sustained.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Push your little buttons. Have we got little vote? Where's our voting buttons?
No, we haven't got any.
I would suggest, Pam, that
there are voting buttons.
I would suggest that you there's a reactions one. I'm not sure if that's in there, but I'd suggest that it would be a no if you want to.
You got to.
On some versions they have a yes/no option. On other versions, this version they've only got a raise hand one.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Well, give me a little wave then. All those in favour?
Yes.
Aye. Thank you. Those against? Carried. Matters arising from the minutes. Are there any matters that anybody would like to raise from the minutes? No? Okay, we move to the interest register then, and I'm sure that Lee would like me to mention that it is possible for you to amend and update the interest register yourself in this Board Pro version. I'm not quite sure how to do it, but I will mention that you could be doing it yourself rather than notifying her if you would like to. Okay, so I'll just move straight to the monthly report now, and who's going to speak to this first? Matt, are you going to kick us off on this one and introduce the open report?
Yep, I sure can. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, where will I start? I had the privilege to talk to our Watts board about this today, so I'll try and sort of truncate it a little bit just in the interests of time, because it was quite a lengthy discussion, but obviously also very happy to take questions at the end. Where I do want to start, as I explained earlier, was way back sort of 4 or 5 weeks ago. It seems like a very long time ago, but it's important to start there because it's very much guided our actions over the past 5 weeks. And going back to those times, New Zealand was getting information coming from the likes of China, Italy and Spain and whatnot around the rates of COVID-19 infection and deaths as well. There was also modelling which was going on within New Zealand at the time, which were actually, they were talking about cases of around about 1,000 a day. And so, with that kind of information and not having really faced, this sort of pandemic clearly in the past, our actions very much reflected the information which we had available to us, and were entirely focused around supporting health and safety. I guess in terms of our expectations, again, given at the time, we'd probably expected that a number of our team members would get infected. We talked about our supply chain potentially being infected and the implications on that. And not just infected, but there's probably some talk about, that the worst possible case that somebody would pass away. But I guess all of our actions around that were very much built around building resilience and capacity in terms of what we thought we would be able to do during the lockdown period. During this time as well, we had some scares and some come to truths. Westgate, our store out there, had believed that somebody had been in contact with somebody who had COVID-19, so we needed to isolate that store and the team in there. Our team at Green Bay got very anxious, and I suppose just to cut a long story short there, that team wasn't available to work. And we also had a bunch of sort of ad hoc cases whereby people believed they may have been exposed to COVID-19 or they may have had it, etc. So I guess in a bunch of our minds, there may have been some expectation that we may be only able to operate for so long. And I guess in and amongst all that as well. So I'm just trying to find my mouse button here. Yeah, in and amongst all that as well, we obviously closed our hospitality venues in late March, and retail very much followed in terms of altering the way that we did business. We very much had to alter quite significantly, primarily to protect the health and safety of our teams and our customers. I sort of fast forward from that, I guess those expectations way back then to I guess where we are now. And I guess we've had a few sort of ups and downs. Obviously, the sale of spirits and RTDs created a little bit of noise out there, but I think that we dealt with that very, very well, and the public sentiment was very much behind us in terms of taking those actions, which we did. In terms of trading post that time up until today, I guess what I would summarise it by saying is that we've got a very robust and sustainable process in place, and that really is around reducing the impact on our team and reducing impact on trade as much as is possible. When we first started into level 4, we had 8 stores trading, and over the course of the sort of the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, we've increased that consistently up to the 14 that we're operating now. We're operating, as most of you will know, as a one-in, one-out model. We've got a really good geographical spread across West Auckland as well. Stores are trading currently from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday. And I guess, in and amongst all of this, we've taken a huge amount of precautions with regards to the health and safety of our teams. And we've got some really good processes embedded, not only with our teams, but I'd suggest our customers are aware of what they are as well. It's interesting, as I go around to the likes of the supermarkets and other retailers, I can't help but think that a lot of the messaging and the actions that we have taken are very much leading in this space. So, a big hats off to the team around that. In terms of, I guess, our operational, I just did some analysis on currently we're transacting about 24,000 transactions per week. That's down from the 72,000 transactions that we averaged in the 4 weeks prior to lockdown. But when you consider we're doing a sort of a one-in, one-out model, those 24,000 transactions equates to about 350 transactions per day, which is around about 1 customer a minute. So, I think we've got a very, very robust and efficient way of doing things. In terms of, I suppose most importantly, our team, we've certainly had challenges around availability of the team. We've had about 25% of our team who have been unable to work, and that's really been a combination around childcare, their own compromised immunity, or living with others who are vulnerable as well. The fact that we've been closed on Sundays has certainly stretched our rosters a little further. And I would just like to mention, obviously, that we've had our hospitality team members working during this time as well. From an IT perspective and thinking about our support office team, they've very much been able to work remotely, and that's worked exceptionally well. And I guess, from a team member point of view, all paid their normal monthly earnings. And I think, that has certainly created a huge amount of goodwill from our team. And I think as we start to exit from level 4 to level 3 and even lower, that goodwill, I think, will really pay off. And I think, as time has gone on, we've certainly seen much more availability of our teams to work. And I think that's a function of 2 things. One is we're very effective health and safety protocols in store, and they are becoming better known and better understood by our teams. But I guess in a more macro sense, I think New Zealand's success around controlling and potentially eliminating coronavirus is probably leading to, I guess, a sense of comfort. Yeah, today we obviously moved from level 4 to level 3. And I guess from a business operations point of view, not a huge number or not a huge amount of change in reality. It was interesting. Marie and I were on a call with our leadership team late this afternoon, and I was interested to find out, given that we've now gone to Spirit and RTD sales, if we're exceptionally busy. But I think it's actually the likes of McDonald's and KFC who seem to be stealing our thunder at the moment. So I think they're experiencing the queues. Yeah, so what do we see different at level 3? As I mentioned, the sale of spirits and RTDs. As of the 4th of May, we'll also be operating our new click and collect, click and deliver service. We'll be operating that out of 3 stores, and we'll be expecting to be able to do about 144 orders per day in total. Today, we also kicked off a food takeaway option at 3 of our venues, ET, Brick Lane and Mr. I. And what we'll also be looking to do is to open more stores as well. We certainly know that as we open more stores, the transaction count and sales obviously increases accordingly. Over the next, I guess, week or so, the team is certainly starting to think about what does level 2 and what does level 1 look like as well. I think retail will probably be back to as close to normal as one would possibly expect. We probably need to do some, I know we need to have a look at what sort of planogramming looks like within our stores, just to make sure that we can ensure the correct social distancing. I think hospitality probably offers, quite a few more challenges, to be honest, and I think that's around, clearly the level 2 restrictions have got limits around gathering sizes. They've got social distancing protocols as well. But I think probably the bigger issues there is around customers' comfort in terms of returning to those venues. So I think that's something that we'll certainly need to be looking into and staring down what that means. So I guess it's probably it. And from a very brief overview from myself, and I'll probably just look to Marie in terms of anything which you think I might have missed. Just on mute your microphone, Marie.
Sorry, and I just lost you there for a moment, Matt. Did you introduce me? Sorry.
Matt said you might have something else you wanted to add.
If there's anything that you thought I missed or whatnot, I guess. Yeah, but actually, before I do hand over Marie, and I'll maybe get you to talk to it as well, I guess, just from a team perspective, the team are in really good spirits. And I'm sure if you have been out into any of our stores, I think, they're doing an outstanding job. They're very enthusiastic. They're very passionate about what they do. And they're very happy and comfortable to be working. So, Marie?
I think that's a very good point, and I'd if you can get out there and see our stores, I'd strongly encourage it. Just from what Matt's been saying, but to be able to see how we're operating at the moment, it's completely different than what you would have even imagined 4 weeks ago, and it's a really good operating environment as far as safety is concerned. And I guess one of the things we reflected on was we've probably managed to achieve sort of the most effective model for getting transactions through. So a good balance between looking after the customer, but also being able to achieve the safety aspects, a really, really high level of safety for our team as well, which was always our highest priority right from the beginning, and still continues to be, obviously. But and that is, as Matt mentioned, why a lot of the staff are happy to come back. In fact, we keep getting comments about it's so good to be back in my store, or it's so good to be back at work, because they are feeling that comfort. I think the other thing as well is it's been so different for the teams, and I think we might have mentioned last time, is that you've got people that have been thrown together that potentially have never met each other, and you've got hospo and retail working together, and they all and as we've gone through each week, people have got more and more more aligned to how to operate, to work it out. But the teams basically have to work it out themselves. They have to kind of work out their own workflow and who's doing, and they know what the jobs had to be done and who's probably the best person to be doing those jobs. And it's worked incredibly. And what a great environment for them to work in. It's a real team building exercise just in itself. So you couldn't design one quite like it, I don't think. But I think it actually demonstrates really strongly what a culture that we have in this organisation, that the team is so willing and able and happy to do this in such unusual circumstances. So I think, like I say, if you can get out and just see that in operation, just let them know who you are, and security guard will let you through and go and say hello to the team. I'm sure they'd love to see you guys there. The other one I think is that I'd just like to mention is really the leadership team and the wider leadership team that have been working on this, which has been, it has been an absolute roller coaster, and the number of things that have had to be discussed, worked through, and the decisions to be made, and all the even the small things about even trying to get things like hand sanitizer where you couldn't beg, borrow, or steal it, right at the beginning was such a big thing, right through to, yes, the decision to stop selling spirit, RTDs and spirits, or how to go about operating our stores. So the wider team has come together really well, and Matt's been directing that extremely well, where we've been, I think it's only been this last week that we haven't met pretty much every day in the afternoon, just to talk through all the different aspects, and everybody's had a big input in that. It's been a really interesting and challenging time, but everybody has pulled together. So I guess from there, I'd like to make sure. I guess I'm trying to demonstrate that the trading is definitely as good as it can be. The team is in good spirits and working towards working in a sort of new normality. And the leadership team, having fought fires for the last 3 weeks, have worked together really well to do it, and are now potentially looking to come out the other side with a little bit more of a strategic and forward-looking view of where do we go to from here. So I think hopefully that gives you the confidence that things are definitely going as well as they are, because we certainly feel that they are, and there's a lot of people working very hard to make sure that the trading and the operations are working safely and efficiently.
Thanks very much to both our acting CEOs, Matt Williams and Marie Weaver. Now I'm going to ask if there are any board members' questions, bearing in mind that what is being asked here is being directed to the open report that you have before you. If you want to raise commercially sensitive issues, you need to leave that for the closed portion of the meeting. So I've got Kurt and Margie. Any other members that want to ask questions? Ben, Catherine. Okay, bit of a speaking order there. Off you go, Kurt. Need to unmute. Yep.
And please do just tell me if this should be for the closed meeting. I just want to inquire about the provision of PPE and the recommendations around use. Just wondering about the source of the PPE, and if you've had any problems or any concerns about distributing it, and whether, say, incidents of lack of PPE or improper use of PPE are included in incident reports.
Yeah, I'll talk to that, Kurt. As Marie mentioned, from the very early days, we struggled to get PPE. But what I would say is that we were never short of it. So in terms of who did we get it from, Marie, I think we begged, borrowed and stole it from a variety of different sources, to be brutally honest. There are very few companies, including our main suppliers, who could ensure continuity of supply. So essentially we got it from wherever we could, and we reached out to a number of different sources. In terms of the guidance that we took around the use of PPE, our first port of call was around the Ministry of Health, and they have got some very good guidelines around who should be wearing what, and they give some very good details in terms of what industries should be wearing what. I think while the Ministry of Health do provide guidelines, individuals also take different levels of comfort in terms of the PPE that they use. To give you an example, in terms of retail workers and the like, things like gloves and face masks are actually not recommended. I won't necessarily go into the reasons, but they're not recommended. Where face masks and gloves are recommended are for the likes of police, customs and health workers. So we would make the PPE available to people if it's out of levels of comfort, but we would also give our guidance based on Ministry of Health guidelines. What we also have got in store is a shift leader, and that shift leader is responsible every 15 minutes for making sure that the teams are following the health and safety protocols, so the distancing and the cleaning of hands and whatnot.
Thanks, Matt. Margie, your question. Margie, you need to unmute.
Thank you. Yep. It just takes a while. Thank you. That was a really comprehensive report, as was the written one. I just guess I had a question about the recommencement of sales of spirits and RTDs, and whether you are requesting ID from customers to prove that they're in the area, or you think the numbers are such that it won't be an issue if people come from outside the area.
Yeah, I think there's possibly two things that changed moving from level 4 to level 3. One of them was that retailers outside of West Auckland are now able to do click and collect. Previously, they were only able to do click and deliver. So I think from a demand point of view, I think that a good deal of the demand for spirits and RTDs will be satisfied by local or retailers in people's local areas. I guess the other piece around that is that level 4 changes, or the guidance changes to be to allowing travel within a region, and that within a region I think is up to about 45 minutes. I think is what it is. So I guess for those two reasons, we made the recommendation that we would start selling spirits and RTDs again. I think there's possibly also I suppose the counter is a little risk in terms of if we've got retailers outside of West Auckland selling those products, albeit click and collect, and we are not selling them. I think that may cause some favourability issues at the same time.
Thanks very much, Matt.
You did mean the change to level 3, not level 4.
Oh, sorry, my mistake, Janet.
I think also the sort of mitigating factor that we thought of when we were making that decision was that the original concern was around the size of the queues and our ability to get people through as quickly as possible. And we've gone from, as Matt mentioned before, we've gone from the 8 stores to 13, 14. I can't keep up.
14.
So we've almost doubled the number of stores we've got, and our operating efficiency has gone up significantly. So we don't have those queues in the stores. So those two things had to go hand in hand. We needed to get make sure we weren't going to have that sort of long queue issue at the same, and as well as the fact that those restrictions have reduced going from level 4 to level 3.
Thanks very much, Matt and Marie.
So can I just
Maggie,
clarify?
did you want to follow up something there?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify then. There's no requirement for anyone to bring proof of address. Anyone can go to any of the Trust stores that are open for purchase of RTDs and spirits. Is that correct? Because you think you can manage the public health implications around the numbers and social distancing and control outside the shop?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's affirmative from the two CEOs. Neil, I have a speaking order, so you're after Ben and Catherine.
Just wanting to illustrate something Margie just said.
Well, I will come to you, but Ben and Catherine are ahead of you in the speaking order. Ben, your turn.
Right. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Awesome. Hey, look, thank you for the report. It's really, really thorough. And I guess I just wanted, Matt, I mean, maybe you rather than Marie, but Eva, just thinking about level 2, because we're not, arguably, we may not be terribly far away from level 2. It could be 2 weeks. It's just, you know, that's obviously quite a dynamic shift in how the business is going to operate again, because you're almost stepping back from the one in, one out thing, but also going to have a whole new range of operational concerns around, you know, you've got some stores are quite narrow aisles. How are you actually going to operate them safely for both customers and staff? And, you know, I just wondered if you could elaborate on how the thinking is going on that. So it's, you know, because it, you know, hopefully it is.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, we're certainly starting to think about that now. What we probably, as I said earlier, we don't envisage there won't be a huge change in the way that we're operating from level 4 to level 3. But to your point, level 2 is quite significantly different from level 3, albeit, you know, I'm sure the government will still come out with some recommendations and some guidelines around how we may operate in level 2, which again might be different from how we operated in level 2 before. Level 2 for us, as we see it from a retail perspective, is very much as close to business as usual as is possible. So what does that look like? We see us returning to opening as many stores as is possible, and I'll speak to that in a second. And we expect to be able to return to normal business trading hours as much as is possible. You're quite right of, I guess, some of the operational constraints of how we will open some stores. And I said we'll try to open most stores. There are some stores which, again, if you take a look, Blockhouse Bay is actually a very good example. It's a very, very small store. So for the foreseeable future, and just a bit of a heads up, we are planning at the moment around how we might be able to operate that store or open that store in the near future. And that might look like simply a one in, one out. And it may only operate like that for the conceivable future. In terms of moving down to level 1 and whatever that looks like, we just have to see what, I guess, the guidelines are around how those stores operate and for how long. So there's Blockhouse Bay, there's Newland West, and I think there's one other, which just in terms of their store footprint doesn't make them an overly shoppable store. What we'll also need to do is have a look at where our shelving and how our customer flow works, so that we can ensure some safe social distancing. And it's interesting, a lot of the signage companies now are actually making in-store signage, stickers and whatnot available, you know, to put on the floor, to put on the aisles, to put on the shelves and whatnot, to explain what 2 meters looks like. People often don't actually understand that, and to give customers a whole lot more guidance around how they should be shopping in our stores.
Thanks.
Pam, your microphone is muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Thanks. Marie, did you want to add to that? No. Ben, you didn't have a follow-up? No. Catherine, you're the next speaker.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Pam, and also thank you, Matt, for your and you have talked a little bit about
Can't hear a
Catherine,
thing.
we're struggling with your sound again.
okay. Can you hear me at all? Or?
We can barely hear you and it's distorted. Have you got a microphone there or not?
Yeah. Catherine, type her question.
Yes, I think that might be the easiest. Catherine, can you put your question into the chat, please? And we'll come back to you. I'll go to Neil and then come back to you. Sorry, Neil, to have cut you off before. If you'd like to ask your question now, and we'll come back to Catherine in a minute.
Oh, no, it was just going from 4 to 3. We don't have a mandate to collect addresses. That's correct, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, Satara is on the line here.
Margie's point of it might be a bit invasive if we were to start wanting people to provide their, address details if they're from out of the area.
Yeah, so as I understand, are you talking about contact tracing? Are you talking about shopping?
Well, is there a difference? I mean, if people are coming to stores,
Yes, there is.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
I mean, if people are coming to stores under 3, it's different from them coming to stores under 4, isn't it? In terms of
Absolutely. In terms of coming from outside of the area, absolutely. Mm.
Right. Catherine, I still don't seem to have a question come up on chat from you yet.
Okay, I'm typing. Can you hear me?
We can very faintly.
Okay, my question is, when is the Blockhouse Bay store opening, please?
Yeah, I was just, Catherine, I just mentioned that a little earlier. We're currently doing some work around how we can open Blockhouse Bay, and I think it might be one or if not 2 other stores. It'll probably operate quite differently in terms of the stores which we're operating now. So at the moment, each of our stores operates with probably 4 to 5 people in it, a combination of a cashier, a personal shopper, somebody managing the queue, etc. Some of those smaller stores, of which Blockhouse Bay is one, we might operate on 1 cashier and 1 security guard at the front door. And I'm going to look to Marie, but I think we're talking about, and no promises, but within the next sort of 10 days to 2 weeks.
Thanks very much indeed, Matt. Marie, did you have a comment on that?
And that's, Matt, you're in regards to the existing Blockhouse Bay store? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just what Matt's saying is just reiterating what he's saying is we will be looking at each store and seeing how, and on its own merits, on how that can look. Firstly, it's around what staffing is available, and then 2, how that particular store, which is obviously very much different than the Glen Eden store, can operate. A good example would be if any of you, and I know Mark has because I've met him up in the queue, have been up to the Titteringi Village Wine and Spirit store, which pretty much barricades itself at the door with some, and they've got it set up really well that they can just bring your order gets and they can bring that order to there, or we can just, as Matt mentioned, say only 1 customer in the store at any one time, and the cashier stays behind the Perspex screen that's in front of the point of sale. Yeah. So that type of thing.
Thanks very much to both of you. I've now got Leanne and then Janet. Go ahead, Leanne.
Yeah, thanks. It was really following up on Neil's question, which I think you were sort of partially answering there, Matt, which was just around contact tracing level 3 and what our obligations are or aren't in that regard.
Yeah, so under, and Satara is there, so I might look to her as well, just in case the information I'm giving is, I know it to be correct because she gave the information, but I think as it stood under level 4, there was orders put out under the Health Safety Act, which required contact tracing to begin, or contract tracing to be allowed. Those orders weren't renewed until around, I think it was April the 20th. So by default, we were not, and people in general are not able to collect that information any longer. I'm sure you, when you go along to your local supermarket and a bunch of other retailers, they're also, I think we were talking about this a little earlier on, is what the intentions are or what the requirements are around contact tracing. I know that the Prime Minister was talking, I think, yesterday around the possibility of a contact tracing app being available in a couple of weeks' time. And you would have seen in Australia, the government over there has launched a voluntary app, of which they had about 1 million people sign up on the first day. Campbell Barber, who many of you will know is on our Watts board, very closely connected in terms of the retail environment. And he gave some suggestion to the fact that moving forward, it might be a government requirement for everyone to be doing contact tracing. But until such time as we get further guidance on that, we'll take our guidance around what we can and can't do in terms of legitimately taking customers' information, and that clearly relates to the Privacy Act.
Thanks very much, Matt. Janet, go ahead, please.
I don't need to ask mine now because mine covered the same issue.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we've run through the speaking order and the questions that people had. There will be there'll be room to elaborate perhaps on any commercially sensitive issues later in the meeting. But what we'll do now is we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is looking at the just drawing attention to the meeting dates for Portage and for the other trust meetings, which are all available on the trust website.
Can we move the monthly report to be accepted?
I'm not sure if it has to be accepted here or not, but I'm happy for you to move that, Ami, if you would like to do so.
Yes,
do we have a seconder?
Yes.
Seconder to, thank you, Leanne. All those in favour, please give me a little wave so I can see you on the screen. All those against, carried, thank you. Okay, now we have in the public forum, what we've done is we've asked members of the public to submit questions to be answered at this point in the meeting, seeing that we're not yet in a live streaming situation. And you'll see that we have just one question tonight. And so I'll just read it out and then I'll make a response to it, and then I'll ask if there's any other responses that people would like to make. So the question is from S. Woodward, and it says, in the lead up to and in the early days of the level 4 COVID lockdown, it was widely disseminated fact that the trust stores would be the only physical specialist liquor stores that would be allowed to be open. As reported in the mainstream media, this led to many people from outside of the West Auckland area travelling into the area to source spirits or other types of liquor not available at local supermarkets. This was an absolutely predictable situation with a number of quite negative ramifications. Why did the trust management not predict this and devise a mechanism to deal with it, such as requiring proof of address upon entry to the stores? While proof of address isn't perfect, it would have helped and is simply an example of one possible solution. So I guess that the response that I was wanting to quote there was just from the report which we've already received, which is from our 2 acting CEOs, that we have strived, I'm not sure if that should be, we have striven, Janet, should we have striven to provide the best service possible to our customers while keeping the health of our team members firmly top of mind. On reflection, there are some things that we would have done differently. However, at the time, decisions were being made very rapidly and with the best information available. So I think that we are very proud of our management team for having kept in mind the health of our staff and also the best health considerations for our customers as they've worked through this decision-making process. And I suppose the only other comment that I would make is that hindsight is a wonderful thing. And I'm sure that looking back, we can all see ways in which things could have been improved. Now, if yes, I'll come to you in a second, Janet. I just asked the 2 acting CEOs if there's anything they'd like to add to their own comments from their own reports.
Yeah, I think you're very much correct when you say the benefit of hindsight, and you know, there was lots of moving parts at the time, and things were moving very, very quickly. You know, what I would say is that we obviously monitored the situation, and we monitored that in terms of taking the contact tracing information. And I guess as soon as we became aware that it was going to become a greater and greater issue, that's when we took action. From a customer perspective, they probably didn't see us taking action for a day or two, remembering that we had a Sunday in there, and we purposely left that to enable us to communicate that message effectively to customers as well. So, yeah.
Thanks very much indeed, Matt. Janet?
Yes, I think that's a very good response, but I'd like to come back to the very beginning where this person talks about it being widely disseminated that it would be such and such, that the spirits would be available. I think that there should be some comment, perhaps in the response, which says it was not the trusts that was disseminating that information at the beginning at all. That was the media in general, who queried why we had why we were classed as being essential.
Okay, so we'll note that as being part of the response to that question in the public forum.
Yeah, because
Thanks.
that sort of is implying that we wanted that to happen.
Mm-hmm. That certainly might be the inference that could be taken from that. So thank you very much for that contribution. Okay, I'm now going to move to see if there's any general business that members would like to raise from the public part of the meeting, from the documents that have been part of this session. No? Okay, well then I'll ask that somebody move the resolution, which is that under section 48(1)(a)(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, that the public be excluded from whole of the remainder of the proceedings of this meeting to consider agenda items relating to matters of a commercial nature, to discuss reports and trading information strategies that are considered commercially sensitive in accordance with section 72H of the Local Government's Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, the Lagoima Act, and other specific grounds specified with regard to each item. Do I have a mover for this, please? Thank you, Ami.
I'll move
Seconder?
it. I'll second it.
Thank you, Kurt.
Oh, that's all right.
Sorry, was there somebody who wanted to speak to this? This is just a procedural motion. No? Okay, all those in favour, please give me a little wave so I can see on the screen. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll now